Hi there, my name is Shoggy. I am a longtime veteran of this game, and also have been heavily enjoying the ever-living shit out of this game. But I also want to state one of the weapons I absolutely have been loving since its release, and yes, it's not been out since the beginning of the game, but it's been out just about ever since we had our good old boy Nidus Prime, is our lovely Ghoulsaw. The Ghoulsaw, honestly, is one of the many types of weapons that are held very close to my heart. And seeing that the Kuva Ghoulsaw is coming in soon, I want to go ahead and place up some ideas of what should actually be done for it, because it does need a bit of some love, to be honest. I'd like to also state that if you don't want to hear my little tiny rant, I'm going to have a small one. Go ahead and jump to this timestamp here, and then you guys will go ahead and discuss about the actual weapon itself for just a brief moment, or for just to get it started. I'd like to go ahead and state, though, Ghoulsaw is one of the weirdest weapons, but I love how weird it is. But also, checking over all the different stances before I made this video, and even before I did any of the recordings and so on and so forth, I found out some of the reasons as to why the weapon is not as powerful as a lot of people think it is, but there's a good reason as why it's not as good as the other weapons, at least from how people look at it. Ghoulsaw has some of the lower damages out of all of the entire stances, but it makes up for that because it's purely or more heavily leaning into crowd control in comparison to any other melee weapon in the game. And with that, I'd like to also state that if you don't like the Ghoulsaw, it's your opinion, I understand, and I have no gripe about it. It just also makes me feel like you don't fully understand the weapon, but you don't have to make it a full opinion on it. That's fine. If it's not your playstyle, it's not your playstyle. But I do state and I do promote the Ghoulsaw for being of the very few, if not the only weapon that has the most crowd control capabilities to it, the most grounded, and the most lifted out of every other weapon in the game. But with that, I'd like to also state this one last bit. People have an issue with it having a impact on the starting point of a couple of the attacks. I'm going to be dead honest, it makes sense because impact is supposed to be placed as elemental crowd control, which will be a video for another day, but elemental crowd control is still crowd control either way, and that's what the Ghoulsaw is the best at. Crowd control. The only thing I'd also like to state as well, which becomes a bit of a problem that I feel like needs to be discussed a bit before we fully get into the discussion of the attacks. For some reason, Ghoulsaw, out of all of the weapons that we have for their stances and so on and so forth, the Ghoulsaw has, on average, the lowest, and I do mean the lowest, even lower than Heavisides, the lowest swing speeds and the slowest animations out of all weapons across the board. And I feel like that needs to be fixed, that needs to be addressed, and that needs to be touched on. Because if not, I feel like we're going to be having to go in another direction, which I'll talk about the stats later on near the conclusion of the video, but it is still something to take into account that if we do not pay attention to the animation speed time, then we need to up the actual base speed for the Ghoulsaw to be higher than every other weapon in the game. Mainly for how slow its attacks are for the animations, because the animations is what ruins this weapon, I would state, about 99% of the time. Even with me who's been using it for a long ass time, I feel like that is what's actually ruining it. Not only that, the damage, but again, I'll get to that near the end of the video. For the attacks, Rictus's Wrath, pretty good. I'm not gonna lie. You just do normal attacks, just swing, 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 you're done. And it also ends off in a grounded attack. I'm not gonna lie, it's not the worst. We've had worse. It's not bad. Rip and Ride, one of the funnest things to do, and also two of the attacks already ground targets. Out of the 3 different settings of damage that it will do, it does 2 grounded. I'm not gonna lie, that's good. 2 grounds? Nice. You can cancel it, by the way. When you finish going throughout the entire ride, you can hit roll, which is just, your shift, or if you're not playing on controller, just whatever the roll button is. I've heard people change their controls for the controller to be having the roll button be on a different button, but whatever your roll button is, that's what you can do at the very end of the Ghoulsaw's animation, and it'll immediately cut off the slam part. You can get right back onto writing, and if you do it fast enough, with the amount of timing you have from when it starts and when it ends for the ride part, if you do it properly, you can literally almost have an infinite writing as long as you just keep doing that same attack pattern. But besides the point, carving Carcass, the heavy attack, both the standing and the slide, they're good. I like the standing way more, but the problem is that it's something that I've had to state about for quite a while, and it's what I stated already in a way, is that the animation is too slow. Even with higher wind-up speed, which by the way, crit damage is worthless on this weapon because it's a status weapon, the wind-up speed, even when having Tenokai, it's bad. I'm gonna say that now. It's so bad, and it makes me makes me try and think, why in the hell is it this slow? I know you're trying to rev it up and then start slashing them, but some of the time when in actual use in actual missions, instead of a standstill target, sometimes you have to actually try and slide yourself a little bit closer to a target because they're walking back, because it doesn't do any actual crowd control usage to it. And yeah, it's supposed to be big amounts of damage, but the problem is, again, it doesn't do as much damage as a lot of people would think. It's one of those lowest damages out of almost every single, almost, not all, but almost every single status weapon in the game, Ghoulsaw has of the lowest. Near the lowest at that. So, that's why I'm with the heavy, just the standing up straight and hitting the heavy, not great. Also, aim heavy does the same thing, by the way. I tried it. But when it comes to this heavy slide, that's pretty okay. Doing that lifted status, not gonna lie, not bad. But dear God, they freaking fling across the entire map. It's I hit them and go, whee! I'm like, where the f did it go? But I rarely ever use the heavy slide anyways. The basic slide is better. Or not the basic slide, the basic heavy attack is better for carving Carcass. Spine Splitter, the jump slash. I'm not gonna lie, if you're not slamming with this, it's just don't jump. It's not the best. Maybe if you want to hit a headshot, but even then it's you can hit heads a little bit better with just aiming up a little bit higher to get the headshots while you're doing the next one, which would be known as the Ghoul Rush. Ghoul Rush is better, but the problem is that I feel like it should instead be doing one hit every single time you're going forward. It should instead be hitting at least twice, maybe 3 times. Like it does 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, not 1, 1, 1, 1 the entire way, because that thing would be spinning at a decent speed, and at a higher attack speed, you're instead just moving faster towards the target. And yes, this blade does spin a bit faster, but you have to pump a lot of attack speed, which we'll talk about soon, or near the end of the video, talking about how much attack speed it actually needs. But I would state, if anything, for Butcher's Revelry, and it comes to the Ghoul Rush when you're running at targets, that should be a 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, not a 1, 1, 1, 1. At least that's how I feel like for the damage. And that's by the pacing, by the way. Not the actual numbers of damage, but I mean by the pacing at least. When it comes to the Reciprocator, I love it. Makes me feel like a Beyblade. The first part of it at least. I usually do the first part of the Reciprocator, and then I do one Rictus Wrath, and then one normal attack of Rictus Wrath, and then back to spin again. Because the other part of Reciprocator, it's not bad. Yes, it does do grounded, and it also does, or it could do lifted too, yeah. But either way, I feel like putting in instead where the speed's a little bit better, because the speed's already pretty decent, but it's still, like I stated beforehand, it still struggles quite a bit with attacks because of how slow that is. Because even when you're doing the Reciprocator, It's still quite slow. So you have to really amp up the shit out of your freaking attack speed to actually make it feel good, in my honest opinion. And that's kind of the issue with Ghoulsaw. As I stated already, it's quite slow for its attacks, at least for how its wind-up is and everything like that, for all the attacks in general. Ankle Grinder, I'm not gonna lie, Ankle Grinder is the slowest. Out of all melees, it is the slowest. It is the worst. And it's also why almost nobody will see me using it on purpose. I usually use it on accident because there's known as slide animation canceling when you're doing your melee. And if you timing it perfectly when you're trying to move forward, you just quickly tap the slide button, and instead you'll boost yourself forward like as if you're doing a normal slide without doing the slide attack, nor getting the slide attack bonuses. Yes, that's a sad thing, because slide attacks are pretty damn good, but when it comes to the Ghoulsaw, it's bad. So it's better to just do slide canceling, and that does help a bit, but it's not common. And it does require you to understand pacing with your own attack speed and get used to using attack speed boosts if you're wanting to use attack speed boosts, and so on and so forth. I state just, if you want to try doing better at slide canceling when it comes to trying to use your melee more, when you're trying to run at enemies, definitely try and go with just testing it before I state to jump the gun. Deep cuts. This one, it's interesting. I'll give it that. Deep cuts, with it being as a type of finisher in and of its own self, both normal finisher when a target's standing, or a grounded finisher, or a target that's on the ground but not grounded, and does a finisher, it's weird. That's all I can say. It's weird. Because out of all of the status weapons that have a finisher attached to them, and I think it's mainly because of the stance this happens, that you do not get much of any statuses. You don't. You don't get any statuses when you're doing the finishers, in comparison to every other status weapon that'll do finisher damage. And even then, the Ghoulsaw can do a lot of good damage with its finisher. Not the best, but it can do a lot of good damage, but it's lacking. It's lacking all because it's not doing its statuses like it should be. So that means it hurts itself in damage that way. So I would like to state, fix this. Please. At least by the time of the Ghoulsaw, fix this. This needs fixed. Please. Fix it. Because that honestly would make the Ghoulsaw feel already 10 times, if not 100,000 times better. And this is coming from somebody who used the Ghoulsaw quite a bit. Next, I'd like to also state about, at least for one last main thing, before I continue to the build of Ghoulsaw, and Diriga, using it for a Lazy Man's Primer, and so on and so forth. I want to state that for the Ghoulsaw, weirdly enough, Ghoulsaw is of the very few weapons that has, actually not even few, it's one of the only weapons, if not the only weapon, if we don't count the Incarnate adapters, that's like for the Nami Solo Incarnate, giving the Incarnate adapter, allowing it to be able to reach 100% follow through, the Ghoulsaw is the only melee weapon that has 100% follow through. The only one. Where 100% follow through matters. And the reason why this matters is because of melee overuse, or, melee influence. And the reason why this matters is because how melee influence actually works, a lot of people don't really realize how it actually works. When it comes to melee influence, if you're adding more range to your melee, and you're hitting another target behind, so let's say you have two targets in front of each other, and you hit them with your melee, but your melee is long enough to hit the next target behind the main target you're hitting, influence will not take from the first target you're hitting for its follow-through damage, because it uses follow-through damage. It uses the second target that you hit, or the last target for the last and final follow-through damage, and then it does its next stage of follow-through onto targets within the 20 meters, which is how the influence actually works. Yet with the Ghoulsaw, since it don't give a damn, it has 100% follow-through, then it ain't gonna give a damn if you hit another target when you're hitting one. If you hit 2 targets because your range is far enough, then guess what? You hit 2 targets and now your influence is just stretched out a little bit further. That's all it is. Ghoulsaw is the only one that really gets that benefit. Yes, I know the non-solo Incarnate can have up to 100% follow through, but that's because of the Incarnate adapter, not at base. I'm looking at base stats, not including any of the Incarnates. If we include the Incarnates, the Nami-Solo, yes, can get that. But besides the point, I'd like to go ahead and show the Ghoulsaw and my Diriga for those who don't understand how to be modding it, or to mod your Ghoulsaw in general, without a Riven, and so on and so forth. Yes, I do have a Riven for my Ghoulsaw, but I only got it after I made builds without Rivens. And I asked for a friend of mine if he had a Ghoulsaw Riven. He said yes, and gave me the one I have today that I've re-rolled 389 times, and it's still a mediocre Riven. But besides the point, the build is like any other status weapon. Gas and electric, or gas and magnetic if you're wanting to go with melee animosity, or if you want to go with afflictions, or not animosity, correction, if you want to go with melee afflictions, if you want to go with melee overuse, which is the majority of the time, that's what you're going to be mainly looking at when it comes to this weapon. And it's fun. Like I said, the Ghoulsaw is for fun, crowd control, and decent damage, but it needs better damage. But with this, it allows you to be able to do good damage in general. I use this in Steel Path almost all the time. You'll be seeing gameplay from time to time of me using the Ghoulsaw. And I love this weapon to death. So, with the build that I am showing, it's going to be probably your best option for your Ghoulsaw. When it comes to Diriga, and yes, I pronounce it that way because after I heard one YouTuber I listen to and watch from time to time say it that way, my brain can never undo it and unhear it. So anyways, Diriga, I will show you guys the build that I use for Diriga. Both his base build as well as the weapon that he uses. So with the build, you'll see he uses the Manifold Bond, Momentus Bond, and Tenacious Bond, and using your Synth Deconstruct. I'm going to state where you find these mods in a minute. Same thing for the Ghoulsaw. I just want to state something real quick. There's a reason why I use the Burst Laser Prime. A lot of people may not look at it, a lot of people may not understand it, but because of Manifold Bond, copying all stats that come from your gun that the pet is using specifically, or whatever the pet's weapon is, and it copies all elements from them. When using the Burst Laser Prime, it has both high enough crit chance to be able to just put on a 200% crit chance boost, and that gives it immediately into the Tenacious Bond category, which gives you a final crit multiplier. Does this work for the Ghoulsaw? But it's good to have universally no matter what. Momentus Bond is good because you're going to be dealing with a lot of your or not your Tekra, but your Xmas and so on and so forth, so that's helpful as well. And what a lot of people may not know about Momentus Bond is that when you kill a Xmas, but then you kill another one, what a lot of people don't know is that the Momentus Bond stacks, but it stacks in a very hidden way where every new concurrent Xmas you kill will reset the cooldown, but keep the previous element you got onto the weapon and add a brand new element onto the weapon that the weapon doesn't have built onto it. So if you have corrosive, radiation, magnetic, cold, puncture, slash, and impact on the actual weapon, it will then try going for your viral, your gas, your blast, and every other element across the board except for void. If you want to have void, go ahead and put on Astral Bond, but I would never advise it, because Astral Bond, you constantly have to go in and out of your operator constantly. If you want to do it for shits and giggles, go ahead, be my guest. I ain't gonna stop you, but that's gonna be my main statement. Burst Laser Prime also gives, of course, as I stated, the puncture slash an impact. So then once you go ahead and mod on your crit chance for creeping bullseye, you go ahead and place down your elements from your radiation element, your elemental mod, your magnetic elemental mod, then mod for corrosive and cold. You're honestly set. I'm gonna be dead honest. You're honestly set. If you don't want to be worrying about viral, or you want to have viral in your build, then I would state instead, put on viral and put on cold. Or not cold, put on viral and put on heat. Correction, my bad. Heat, I usually don't advise, but again, meh. Because, by the way, you don't want Diriga to shoot. Some people think you should. No, you don't want Diriga to shoot. And if you think, oh, well, I need to add more damage to the weapon in order for his ability to do more damage, then I'm sorry, Sugar Cakes, but that doesn't work that way with the Manifold Bond. No matter what. So at that point, it's like, there's no such thing as elemental priority when it comes to the Manifold Bond. A lot of people may think it is, there isn't. I'm gonna say this now, Sugar Cakes. But besides the point, that's mainly what I would state for your build. And in order to be able to get Burst Laser Prime, for those of you that might be questioning, well, how do you get Burst Laser Prime? What pet gives you Burst Laser Prime? That will be Shade Prime. Shade Prime gives you the Burst Laser Prime, and that's what you want to get and what you want to go for. I can understand if people are like, well, she's vaulted. Well, there's one of two main things. One, wait for the rotation to come around, or two, ask to see if one of your veteran buds have it. If not, come by my community. Plenty of my people in my community, we have relics that are old as fuck, and probably have a bucket load of different relics that are asking for Shade Prime. So, I'm gonna be dead honest. Our community is always open. I always put it down in the description down below. I stream from time to time whenever I'm not having a lot of stress issues. But besides the point, go ahead and join this. Go ahead and join the Discord if you can, and if you want to, be my guest. I'm not gonna tell you no. But if you want to go ahead and learn a lot of other things as well, that community is also open. But otherwise, besides the point, I want to state as well with Shade Prime that Shade Prime is good, especially with their weapon, but she is good for caster-based warframes. Not the types of exalted weapon warframes, but normal caster-based. Like your Vauban, Noko, Octavia, even though Octavia has her own invisibility. And that's just all I can really think of off the top of my head without having to go through a bunch of others. I know a lot of other people will say other things. We're just gonna go on the limb and say that's besides the point. Anyways, I'm not gonna tell my newer players who are probably watching this video. I'm gonna tell y'all where you get your mods. So, without further ado, to modding. For your Ghoulsaw, you're going to be looking for the Galvanized Mods probably first. Now, if you're wondering where you find those Galvanized Mods, I'm going to tell you right here, right now, Galvanized Mods are from Arbitration. But you don't get them specifically from Arbitration. You go talk to the Arbiters of Hexus when you've done arbitrations and got something known as Vitus Essence. Vitus Essence drop from the Arbitration drones. It's not guaranteed, but loot drop chances can be able to increase your chance of dropping them, and resource boosters do boost the amount you get, and I think also the pet mod that multiplies it, which is Loot Retriever, also boosts the Vitus Essence that you'd be able to grab from that. Now, I could be wrong, but last I checked, that's what they can do, so I would definitely suggest if you're trying to badly go for Vitus Essence, go and do that. Make sure you have a resource booster, make sure you have a resource drop chance booster. Necrosis 3 for his Desecrate also counts to the drop rate, and it can also boost the drop rate for the Arbitration drones, and so on and so forth. But otherwise, Vitus Essence, you get it from Arbitration, and then what you do there, you go ahead and go to the Arbiters of Hexus, and there's a certain shopkeeper guy that is there that you go to and you talk to then trade your Vitus Essence for the Galvanized mods. Your Galvanized melee mods of Galvanized Elementalist, Galvanized Reflex, and Galvanized Steel will be there, but for your Ghoulsaw, you're going to be mainly focusing on your Galvanized Elementalist. For the 60/60 mods, in order to be able to get to 60/60 heat, you have to go all the way to mainly Earth. I know there's a couple other places, but there is the spy missions, and they're all spy missions to get your 60/60 heat for your melees, known as Volcanic Edge. in order to be able to get Volcanic Edge, it's a C rotation, which means the C terminal, and it's a 5% drop chance. Good luck. That is all I can tell you, my good Tenno. Good luck. It can be a pain, but it is a 5% drop chance. And that's all from any of the spies that you might get early on. I think even Venus could be able to give it too for their spy. But again, it's a 5% chance. And for your electric Voltaic Strike, you're looking at Borrow. Borrow Katir. Definitely go ahead and make sure you get a lot of prime junk. Sell them for ducats at any relay. I usually go to the Earth Proxima most of the time. Go to your Earth Relay. I know it's not the name of the relay, but besides the point, it's the Vespers Relay. I usually go to the Vespers Relay. That's just normally where I go to. But he's not always at the Vespers Relay. Just pay attention to the mini-map and see where he is spawning on the map for which relay he's going to, and go to that relay. Otherwise, make sure you sell your prime junk, and make sure you get a bucket load of excess prime parts that you won't be needing to be able to get more ducats. So then you can be able to buy the Voltaic Strike from Borrow to be able to get your 6060 electric. To be able to get your magnetic mods, you'd have to get all the way to 1999. I know that's quite a long ways for a lot of you newer players, but for those who have gotten there, you probably already got Magnetic Rush. But also, you need to have Magnetic Might for your secondary to go for your Diriga. When it comes to your radiation mods, you're going to be looking at the Sanctum Anatomica missions. I know it's not the actual Sanctum Anatomica itself, but the units that drop from the units that are in the areas of the Entrati labs on Deimos for those mission types, and for those missions in general, for those tile sets, the creatures that come from that, the Murmur and such, have a chance to drop the radiation mods there, which I heavily advise you go for both, of course, mainly, or not really both, for mainly your Diriga, to be able to make sure you keep able to get the primer going. Because at this point, radiation is only useful for priming, which in a future video, going to be talking about the Loki rework, I'm going to be stating how we can be able to change change radiation and make it better. Besides the point, we're going to go jumping to your Condition Overload. In order to get Condition Overload, they will drop from 3 main targets. These 3 main targets are, as specified, these are the ones that I know offhand. If I miss any of them, please state in the comments. But when you're on Deimos, it has like a 4.45% chance to drop from the Jugulus, the Carcass, and the Saxum units that are on Deimos in the Necrolisk, in the Cambion Drift specifically. When you're wanting to get Weeping Wounds though, you have to check with Mother having the bounties for the second tier bounties specifically. Sometimes it's there, sometimes it's not. It does trade out with Blood Rush from time to time, but just definitely try and check out as much as you can to see if it shows up or not. But Weeping Wounds is extremely mandatory when coming to a lot of status weapons. Last but not least is for the Ghoulsaw. You're going to be looking at the 6060 Toxin mods. With the 6060 Toxin mods, you only get them from Vor, the big man that never shuts the fuck up, all the way over in Void. Sometimes I wish he could shut up just like from the Fury Paradox, but besides the point, you'd want to go ahead and try killing Vor, and he will drop any of the 4 Toxin mods for your shotguns, melees, primaries, and secondaries. But with what you see on screen, I got the Toxin mod for the melees, just to show the main point. That's how you can be able to get it. It is a drop pool of 25% for all of those ones in general, for them to fight over the same pool. It's a guaranteed drop no matter what from Corrupted Vor in the Void, but it basically, like I said, it's your 9 chances out of 10, gonna be 1/4 of the time you're gonna be getting one of the melee mods or something like that. Now as for Diriga, I'm gonna state this real quick and real brief. For Diriga, to be able to get the Manifold Bond, you need to go talk to Master Tizanai from Cetus. Master Tizanai is the guy that takes care of the pets. If you pop over to Cetus, hold down Q, you'll see a little wheel. It'll look like a paw print. Click that, you'll be at Master Tizanai, browse wares, and you should be able to have the availability for the Manifold Bond. If not, increase your rank. If I remember correctly, it's at rank 3, if not rank 4 with Cetus to be able to get the Manifold Bond. If you are not already, start getting your standing, young Tenno. You got a ways to go. For our lovely Momentus Bond and Tenacious Bonds, we gotta go all the way to Fortuna. And you go talk to Mr. Business, or Biz. The Business, when you go ahead and try looking at the Q hold, and you see the little wheel, you'll see there's a little fishy. Click the fishy. That's Biz. Go browse wares. It's either rank 3 or rank 4, if I remember correctly. I could be wrong, but last I checked, it was rank 3 or rank 4. And you'll see Momentus Bond and Tenacious Bond available for you to grab. Of course, you will cost standing, so make sure you keep your standing up, my boys. And all my young Tenno out there, make sure you go ahead and take care of your standing, because let me tell you now, it will bite you in the ass later if you don't take care of it soon. But besides the point, that's where you get the mods. Now, most of the time, people will state, oh, well, we just expect you to look for your mods. I'm going to tell you where they are. That's a bonus here in this channel, lads and lasses. We're going to tell you where these mods are at. If you forget, and if I talk too fast, definitely just slow it down, or just pause, go back, check it, just make sure you heard me correctly. And also, if you ever have any questions or anything like that, the community is always open, the Discord server is always in the description. Go ahead and come along and ask any questions you need. We have a lot of veterans that are also there, as well as myself that keeps tabs on the server almost 24/7, so if you have any questions, we're always there. Besides the point, with everything that I've stated, I'd like to now go to our conclusion of this video. I'm going to say this. The Ghoulsaw being announced as being the next Kuva weapon, I was a bit shocked. I was expecting the Stug. Kuva Stug win, DE. Please. I want the Kuva Stug. Please. Please be next. I want it so bad. I've been begging for it for so many years. Ever since the Kuva Liches have been out, I've been begging for the Stug. I kid you not, there's some friends of mine that have known me for a long time. They will even admit, yes, I have asked for the Kuva Stug since the beginning. I would state as well as I'll trail back again with my understanding of the Ghoulsaw in general. It needs to be looked at heavily for Butcher's Revelry, or we're going to need to talk about the actual stats that the Ghoulsaw, at least for the Kuva variant, should receive. I have stated in general that when it comes to the Kuva Ghoulsaw, I state that the stats that should be increased to it, if we don't increase the movement speed, or at least the movement animation for our Butcher's Revelry stance. These are the stats I would state that the Ghoulsaw will be needing for its Kuva variant, what buffs it needs before adding in the Progenitor. The attack speed that sits at a flat 1 attack speed should come up to 2 or 3. Yes, that would then make the Ghoulsaw be the fastest melee weapon, but it would make up for its problematic and very slow animations. If you don't want to improve the animations of that, then improve the attack speed greatly. And this is of course before mods are applied. For range, 2.45 meters is not bad, but I would advise instead put it up to 3, if not 4 at base. For a status chance, increase it from 27% to 40%, because it is of course a status weapon, and you want to lean more into the status variant, which makes more sense. From slash, I'd like to go ahead and state, go from 114.3 to 140, puncture 45.3 to 52, impact from 37.4 to 40, so then our total damage comes out to 232. The thing is that a lot of people think that the Ghoulsaw needs crit chance and crit damage to make it goated, but in reality it just needs a lot of attack speed, some damage, some range, and just a hefty amount of status chance. It is good with status, but it needs a little bit more. Coming from somebody who actually uses it quite a lot, and I have stated that for the forefront, the best stats that I would state for your Rivens, you're looking at attack speed, status chance, and maybe range. and say fuck all to both crit chance and crit damage. That's the Rivens that are going to be godlike for that. I'd also like to state as well that I do know that when it comes to some of the most recent Lich weapons, they don't get any special passives to them. Any actual passives to them. I'd like to state that the Ghoulsaw deserves a passive. If it just gets stat increases, and being able to have the weapon progenitor stat, or the elemental progenitor stat with it, I feel like it's just gonna be the least used weapon, even more so than it is than already the base Ghoulsaw is now. I feel like it will be the least used, weapon in general. And it will be used more than the base Ghoulsaw, yeah, but not as much as a lot of people would hope. So I would state, after those stats and everything like that, there should be at least a bit of a passive to it. There's 3 ideas I had for a passive for it in general, and I'd like to go ahead and state them out. And again, I state, this is all up to subjective. This is not mandatory, this is not demanding, but I at least trying to keep it within reason. And also I want to make sure that this keeps good ideas out on the board, but it also makes it to where it can be a better inspiration and makes more sense from where the Ghoulsaw comes from, since the Ghoulsaw is of course coming from the Grineer ghouls. So making it better to make it more fitting with what it was made to be as, these passes are trying to keep around that same area of effect that it was made for. So the 3 passes of ideas. Now I'm not saying all 3 should go together, I'm just saying one of these 3 could be chosen, or one of these 3 could be used, but tweaked differently. My first idea is, enemies that die from the Ghoulsaw, no matter if it's from elements or it's from the actual direct damage from the Ghoulsaw, will leave a cloud of toxin and cold damage that is guaranteed, and scales with status duration for how long it will last on the field for 5 seconds, with also a 3-meter AoE. Can that be increased with range? Maybe, but I'm not going to say yes. I'm going to be putting that in the hands of DE if they do something like that in general. But I would state, if you're trying to do for the damage, what would be the damage off from it? It would be the damage going off from the max damage your weapon can do, but not from a heavy attack, nor from the build-up. I would state just whatever was the final damage that was dealt to the target that was because of the Ghoulsaw will be the little toxic cloud that will do both toxin and cold damage to that target. That's how much damage I would state would go for that cloud. When riding the Ghoulsaw, this is the second one by the way, when we ride the Ghoulsaw on Rip and Ride, it will leave a small fissure on the ground that lasts for 10 seconds and scales with status duration, dealing half the damage to targets on top of the fissure, or not on top of the fissure, correction, and full damage on the targets that are in the middle or right on top of the middle of the fissure in general, and this would deal the statuses that come from the weapon itself. Think of along the lines of whenever you do the heavy attack with the Coda or the base cost assist, it leaves puddles on the ground, but it doesn't do a lot of damage, so instead I'm stating with this, have it do the damage that attack did, and it lingers for a duration, and it will do all the statuses that come from that weapon that you have modded onto it, depending on your status chance. Last but not least, the other passive that it could go for, and I would suggest to take this one, again with a grain of salt, but again, it's an idea to take from. Give it a guaranteed toxin and cold damage. Not just 1, 2. Because when you kill a ghoul, the cloud does both toxin and cold damage. That's where also the first passive idea came from. This is another passive idea. And when it's guaranteed cold and toxin damage to targets, that doesn't get combined with mods, and is only 30% of your total damage you have dealt to the target. These are just ideas, again. It's not guaranteed and a demand of this is what it should be, or this one of these three should be on it, but it's an idea of what could be done to make the Ghoulsaw even better than it is originally, because there are a lot of the Kuva weapons, or any of the Tenet weapons, or any Lich weapons in general, that give quite a bit of statuses or give a special passive to them, so on and so forth, that's uniquely different from their base variants. And I'm thinking that the Ghoulsaw should receive one of these types of things to make it even more impactful to have it as the Lich variant. Without it, I don't think that would be the best idea. And I'm going to say that now as somebody who actually uses the Ghoulsaw quite heavily and quite extensively, because also the Ghoulsaw is my 4th most used weapon across the game for melee weapons specifically in Warframe. It's how much I love this weapon. But last but not least, I want to state that the weapon deserves a lot of love. It does. It's what actually a lot of the community had asked for, and it was done with a 50-50 execution. 50% of it was really good for its execution, but the other 50% of it is like, it could use some work, but not the best idea. And I can see where the reasoning of the idea was for it. Well, you get less damage because it's more crowd control based, but with the current state of the game, with how crowd control has become a bigger problem, which will be a video for another day of discussion, I'd like to state to at least give this a bit more oomph for damage to work with it, and to keep it within the theme of it comes from the ghouls, and these liches are using and having an amplified version of what the ghouls were having in their own hands. Because remember, these liches will be holding onto this weapon and beating our own asses with it. So I want to make sure that this weapon actually has the punch that a lot of people are wanting to look at when looking at this weapon. And that's just my ideas. This is again just some tips that if any devs at DE see this, I want you guys to try and take this into account before you guys try making the Ghoulsaw a finished project for the Kuva variant. So then when it comes out with Shadowgrapher coming in, to actually make it feel like it's a big powerful slap and one hell of a punch for the Ghoulsaw, and when it's going into the Kuva variant. And without further ado, I'd like to go ahead and state, thank you for at least coming to watch. Thank you for at least coming in to visit and to listen. And again, our Discord server is always open, always listening, and always there for everybody. If anybody there wants to come in, again, Discord server is always in the description down below. Make sure you like, sub, or if you want, you don't have to, I'm not gonna ask normally. But if you do like what you see and you do want to hear more ideas and as well as more thoughts when it comes to weaponry and so forth, definitely go ahead and give a subscription down on YouTube, and also follow me on on Twitch, same as YouTube. And I'd like to go ahead and state one last final thing. Thank you for tuning in. You guys be motherfucking good, and you motherfuckers have a good night and have a good day. Until then, peace to you.